Kunaal Dudeja. Kunaal is a co-founder and Chief Executive Officer for Virohan Private Limited, an organization which is actually re-engineering vocational training using technology. He's an SRCC Delhi graduate and a master's from Institute of Design. If Mr. Kunaal Dudeja has joined, I would request him to be on the screen. Besides that, I would also welcome Mr. Kalyan T. Chakravarthy, who is here on the screen. You all can. He is actually Executive Director for Pan IIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation. He calls himself Founding Sevak, and the amount of work which he has completed his BTech from IIT Madras and his Masters from ISB Hyderabad. So welcome to Mr. Kalyan T. Chakravarthy. Also, we are waiting for, because we had post this session, there was a 5-minute break, but so we will have to wait for a couple of minutes before our other two speakers, Mr. Kunaal and Mr. Venkateshwarlu, sir, who's the IAS officer of 91 batch and currently Director General for Deen Dayal Upadhyay State Institute of Rural Development, and also Director, UP Academy of Administration and Management, who has been instrumental in shaping the young minds through his skill and strategies for New World Order. So I would also be waiting for him. Miss Vandana Bhatnagar would be joining anytime. She is the Chief Program Officer at National Skill Development Corporation, an alumnus of IIM Calcutta. Her expertise lies in strategic leadership, developing programs and projects at NSDC. So now over to Mr. Kunaal Dudeja, who's here, who is the session chair for this and moderator for this panel. Welcome to you, Kunaal, and over to you. Thank you very much all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen. It's a pleasure to be a part of such a conference, and I would like to welcome the esteemed, panel. Each of them come with a lot of experience and have done a lot of good work in promoting the sector. So before we, get into the session, and thank you for the introduction that you've given, Praveen, I would just like the audience to be comfortable and get to know each of the people. So if maybe, starting with Vandana. Vandana, if you can take 5 minutes quickly to just introduce yourself and just introduce what NSDC as an organization does, followed by, Pankaj. I think he's already introduced himself already, and then Kalyan. Maybe if you could just quickly introduce what your organization does in 2 minutes each, maybe.
Sure, Kunaal, and it's a privilege to be part of this conclave. So the National Skill Development Corporation is an organization that was created about 10 years back, and it's a public-private partnership. It was basically created with the objective of facilitating short-term skill development. So we have an ecosystem of training partners, and we work in close coordination with the private sector as well as with the Government of India under the Ministry of Skill Development. So we have an ecosystem of training partners, close to 700 training partners who are delivering various kinds of short-term training programs in covering all sectors as well as segments, ranging from very, very basic skill programs addressing people who might be class 5 pass or even illiterate people, right up to people who are postgraduates in the data analytics, high medical related skilling proficiencies. So this is an ecosystem which is basically bringing the best of the private sector along with the regulatory and quality assurance that a government oversight provides. So just to provide a quick overview of what our institutional context is, you might be aware, most people would be aware with the formal education system where we have the school education overseen by the NCERT, and we have the higher education overseen by UGC, AICT, and various other technical bodies. The vocational education space is now being overseen by the NCV. NCVET, which is basically now a unified regulatory body for the entire technical vocational education space. So we are running programs, and our other part of the ecosystem are the sector skill councils. There are 37 sector skill councils who are formulating programs, identifying various kinds of job roles in various sectors, converting them into competencies, and those are then delivered in the form of various training programs. And these certifications that we provide are recognized under the NCVET formulation. And as we are moving towards the new education policy, which talks a lot about integration between formal and vocational education, there is a lot of discussion underway on integrating these two regulatory frameworks. So the certificates that we provide in our ecosystem are also going to be recognized in that framework in terms of equivalence. And many of our programs are embedded into school education as well as college programs. So that's broadly what NSDC is doing. And we have just an additional point in terms of the kinds of programs. We have market-based programs which are in terms of paid by students. There can be programs which are funded by corporates. And there is also the large national government program called Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is a completely free program where it's basically intended to make skilling accessible to all segments of society. As the previous speakers are pointing out, it's important to provide inclusion and this opportunity to all people. So that's the entire spectrum of what NSDC does. And we provide all kinds of support to our partners, whether it's financing, technical advisory support, and so on. So I'll end it there, and I'll be happy to go into further details as we go along.
Sure. Thank you so much for that, Vandana. That was hugely helpful for our audience who may not necessarily know a lot about NSDC. Over to you, Kalyan. If you can also, tell everyone who is in the, audience, what does PARFI do, and what is your role in PARFI as such?
So really thanks, Kunaal, and it's wonderful to be in this August panel. Really accomplished, inspiring work all of you guys are doing, and special thanks to Evoke team for a wonderful platform. It's a very, very fascinating conclave. I know this is a season of e-conclaves, but I'm sure this is standing out. So what I'll do is that instead of talking, I will take exactly 2 minutes, 34 seconds, because I have a small video which will say exactly what we're doing. And I think that's about it from my side. So with your permission, I'll just go ahead and play the video right now. I hope everything is audible and visible. So just let me know if there's any issue. Is this okay?
Yeah, good.
One of the biggest challenges India faces is in the area of providing equal opportunities to all sections of society. Skill development is one initiative which brings equal opportunities to all.
Pan IIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation, headquartered at IIT Bombay, partners with state governments through non-profit, joint venture enterprises to create an institutionalized skill development architecture exclusively for the underserved across all districts of the state. The first such special purpose vehicle or SPV was created with agencies of welfare of the government of Jharkhand. The Pan IIT model of skill development is predicated on a short placement, 100% skill loan financing, best-in-class training and residential infrastructure led by ex-army personnel. The foundation runs Gurukuls with 2 to 3 month training in construction, logistics, manufacturing and Kaushal colleges imparting 1 to 2 years of trade licenses vocational education in trades like nursing, catering exclusively for the underserved.
अच्छी ट्रेनिंग आपको मिल रही है। आप सौभाग्यशाली हैं कि आप देश के इस हुनरमंद काम को बढ़ाने वालों में सबसे अच्छी संस्थाएं हैं, जो 3-4 उसमें से एक मैंने अनुभव किया। और भारत सरकार का मंत्री बोल रहा है तो कहीं बहुत अच्छा काम है होगा।
कॉन्फिडेंस हमको गुरुकुल दिया है सर। के स्टूडेंट जो निकल के गए हैं वो अच्छी नौकरी भी कर रहे हैं और गुरुकुल के स्टूडेंट्स विदेश तक गए हैं।
आज अगर गुरुकुल में अगर नहीं होता, ना ही मैं दुबई को देख पाता, ना ही मैं 35 से 40 हजार में कमाता।
ये नर्सिंग कौशल कॉलेज है और मेरी फैमिली कंडीशन उतना अच्छा नहीं है कि इसमें लोन प्रोसेस के द्वारा पढ़ाई कराई जाती है, जिसमें कि घर से पैसे नहीं लगते हैं। कॉलेज बहुत अच्छा है क्योंकि इसमें फैसिलिटी ज़्यादा है और यहाँ थ्योरी क्लास के साथ साथ प्रैक्टिस पर ज़्यादा ध्यान दिया जाता है कि इसमें हाई टेक्नोलॉजी के द्वारा पढ़ाया जाता है। जैसे कि सिमुलेटर है, यहाँ वार्ड बनाए गए, जैसे प्रैक्टिस वार्ड है, ICU वार्ड है।
Yeah, so that's about it from my side. Kunaal, I hope it was just a simple introduction. I hope that works. Yeah.
Kalyan, thank you so much. That was very helpful, and it was good to see the kind of work that Parfi is doing. Before we actually get into the session and before we start having a dialogue with each other, I actually wanted to take a minute and play a video about what actually is the problem that India as an economy or a country faces with the youth in terms of education, and what percentage of people actually go into formal education, and the kind of role that NSDC needs to play, or all of us as vocational training providers need to play to bridge the gap between, and I think, unemployment and the youth which is coming in for jobs. If I can just play for 2 minutes, it's just a 2-minute video. Just going to quickly play that video. I hope everyone had a chance to see the video, and it's, just to reiterate some of the metrics, only 70% of our population finishes school, and only 9% of the population actually goes into colleges. So 91% actually don't do anything and get directly into some sort of work. And therefore, vocational training, which NSDC, is the regulator for, plays a vital role in empowering youth to be able to do something about their career and their families. So I would like to start with some questions for Vandana, and maybe and that'll be a good starting point for all of us. Vandana, I think a lot of people in our audience would like to know, what are the sectors in which opportunities are likely to emerge? You look after the NSDC and you look at the data pan India. So maybe it will be very good for our audience to know what are the sectors in which opportunities are likely to be emerged, and what kind of opportunities would these be? If you can elaborate a little on that, Vandana.
Sure. So Kunaal, I think we are all acutely aware that we are in a very turbulent time. And what was the kind of reality we were living in 9 months back has been turned upside down. And even looking ahead, I think there are many people who are venturing, projections. But as we are finding, a lot of these projections often flounder. But based on what we are seeing in terms of, and just to highlight that recently, about 4 months back, we had launched a platform called ASEEM, which basically was intended to try and capture a real-time picture of where the demand was. And we did this in partnership with Better Place, which is an entity based out of Bangalore, and it also uses artificial intelligence and a lot of the latest algorithms. So they basically, have a platform which we have worked with and tried to take it to the next level. And based on that, within the last 3-4 months, about 5 lakh job opportunities have been actually made available to our, cohort of students. And we have uploaded about entire 1 crore profiles, which are more up to date into that database, so that matching could even take place. But looking at the kind of demand that has been aggregated onto that also and other sources of information, clearly sectors like healthcare and logistics, even segments of retail, telecom, they're all showing a fair amount of activity. And initially we thought sectors like automobile would flounder, but of late again, we are seeing there's a lot of activity developing there too. And looking into what kind of job roles, if we have a country which has got an extremely diverse profile of people. So it depends on which segment you're looking at. You can't thrust a job role of the wrong kind on a youth who's got aspirations at a higher level. But in say, for example, in the healthcare, if you look in absolute numbers, the emergency medical technician role, for example, is a very much in demand. Telehealth services is a high demand sector. Nursing, which is something which Kalyan's organization is working well on. Many of our other partners are seeing demand from many other countries as well. And they have actually transported nurses on dedicated flights across to other countries. And likewise, if you look at in telecom, the optical fiber laying technicians, the mobile repair technicians, these are again segments which have a lot of demand, and they could be jobs or they could be self-employed kind of opportunities. And in logistics, there's again a vast expansion happening. So at the bottom, of course, courier agents is in high demand. But if you move up, things like consignment executives or warehouse supervisors, there's a big demand for it. And cutting across multiple sectors, of course, are segments like data analytics, cybersecurity, which whether it's retail or health or logistics or IT itself, fintech, all of them require these professionals. So these are going to be some of the areas where we'll see a lot of growth. And agriculture, of course, is now also seeing a lot of positive sentiment. And segments like soil samplers or even drone operators, agri-input service providers, these are, again, roles where we'll see a lot of interest. And apart from that, we can see also demand coming up from various government programs. So like the Jal Jeevan Mission, which is a very ambitious program to bring the tap to every household, is going to need a vast army of plumbers, electricians, accessible right down to each Gram Panchayat level. So we are working with the JJM mission, the mission, to see how we can either provide RPL, which the certification to existing plumbers, technicians, masons, and upskill them to provide them some kind of bridge course so that they become readily accessible resource people for these programs. The Ayushman Bharat, the Saubhagya program, which provided electricity down to every household, all of them required vast manpower. So these, again, government programs will also generate requirements, which we will be looking at addressing through our various programs.
Wow. That was hugely helpful, Vandana. And I think thanks for highlighting the various sectors. I think for the youth in the audience, it'll be very good to know that various sectors, as you mentioned, healthcare and the other sectors that you mentioned, right? Very, very important for them to, know where opportunities lie. As you said, even automobile is coming back. It's not what you thought it was going to be. I think that's very, very helpful that the youth should know what are the areas in which they can, look for jobs and growth and career opportunities. And I think one thing that you highlighted very beautifully, that the youth have the ability to choose the career they want. They have the ability to choose the sector they want. It's our job to just help them achieve that. But they have so many options today, and they can choose those out of the options. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
Well, I'm not sure if you'd like to flesh that out as a separate question, but I think the important thing for the youth to know is that it is a very dynamic world that we are living in. It's no longer the time where you go into one job and you stay in that for the next 10 years or 20 years. So we need to be, I think, while there are definite opportunities out there, I think it's incumbent on the youth to actually be consciously looking at what are the, what is the environment looking like, and then
Absolutely. So
upskill
just
themselves.
let me
Yeah.
flesh that out as a question
Yeah.
so that the youth can understand what you're trying to maybe answer. Then maybe it is very important. How is technology and how is the world as we know it disrupting the nature of jobs? What are the kind of skills that you see emerging, and what is the job that vocational training plays on top of the regular schooling and the regular college system to make the youth more relevant in today's ever changing job environment, because jobs as we know it are no longer the same. 10 years ago, the changing job environment was more static. In the last 15 to 20 years, the job environment has become very dynamic. Skills become outdated very quickly. The environment is changing very quickly. It's being disrupted hugely by technology, new ways of working, right? And maybe so just I know you were answering that question, but maybe I just put a question around it, and maybe you can help the audience understand what are the disruptions that are happening, how are the jobs changing, and what is it that the youth needs to do to be able to be better equipped to handle the ever-changing jobs.
So I think there is a lot of work which has been done again on that. I will not start throwing numbers really here, but I think the important point is that technology has come into play in almost all sectors and almost all job roles. It doesn't really now sit at some very high level of proficiency, right down to the guy who rings your bell, a carpenter, plumber. They need to know something about technology interface. And similarly, I think earlier people worked in organizations in the organized space, and then there was a complete informal sector. Now we have this kind of in between space that has got created thanks to the gig economy, thanks to Uberization of many professions, which have picked up what were earlier informal jobs and made them into somewhat organized or formalized jobs. And with that, the people have had to acquire a whole new set of skills, whether it's in terms of adhering to a protocol, customer interface, communication, being able to respond to slightly higher order complex situations. These are things which are really across the board, whether it's problem solving, communication, and technical financial literacy, digital literacy. These are things which are across the board required now from everybody. And I think the good thing is that even if you look at people who we would never have thought to be techno savvy, they have shown immense ability to adapt and upskill themselves, even just learn on the go. So I feel very hopeful about that part. But apart from that, in terms of disruption, I think the part we all know is that certain job roles will disappear, are disappearing. If you look at manufacturing, if you just look at the automobile sector, the shop floor, the factories are now very, very largely dominated by robotic systems. So those kind of manpower roles have kind of disappeared. But equally then the higher order roles like design and those roles which will now be more sophisticated are coming up. And so we need the youth to upskill themselves. The other segment which is expanding rapidly is the creative domain, the care domain. And again, there we know that there is a huge potential for youth to engage. Just looking at how much is happening on YouTube on the TikTok, etc. If you look at that, it shows the immense potential there. So there are many new segments that are coming up. If you look at fintech, there's a need for a lot of intermediaries. So it's too much to cover a lot in this short span of time, but broadly, I would say we are looking at a disruption in most sectors, but we are a country where the bullock cart has lived alongside the rocket going into space. So we do have a wide spectrum of realities in our country. So we do still need people who wouldn't be necessarily roles performed in other countries, which will be still relevant for a while. But going forward, we will see Uberization and disruption in a lot of these roles. And in the manufacturing space, in the organized space, more sophisticated skill sets will be needed by the people who were earlier performing fairly repetitive tasks. So there's just one quick more point I think I wanted to add is that from our point of view, one big shift that has happened is earlier our vocational training was very much defined by job roles and very templatized kind of roles in the market. So if you did an electrician role, you did the skills related to the electrician's domain skills. But there was increasingly a realization of the need for these soft skills or these horizontal skills, which are needed across all job roles. So about a year and a half back, the ministry agreed to a big change in approving a soft skills module, which is about 140-hour module, as part of all their government programming. So it's not a vocational skill in that sense, linked to a specific job role, but something which is being applied to all job roles. And it covers language, it covers digital financial literacy, entrepreneurship, which we see as being required by all. And Vadhani Foundation partnered with us on creating this. So that's a module that is now being rolled out across the board.
So that absolutely is very, very important. I think going beyond just the technical skill set and then helping the youth to develop overall with English skills, with power skills, with all what you mentioned is very, very important. And you're absolutely right. The curriculum that Vadhani Foundation has made, we are also as one of the organizations using it to do skill development with us. So it's a part of our curriculum as well to help the youth, develop overall much beyond technical expertise. Because when they go for employment in the market, the people who look at them to employ them are not just looking at people who have technical expertise, but are also looking at people who have good behavioral skills. They're looking at people who have good practical experience. And I think a combination of technical expertise, practical experience, and English skills, soft skills, behavioral skills is actually the complete package is what the industry is looking at. So thank you.
Sorry, Kunaal, I'm just going to add this for the benefit of the youth who might be connected in this, because we want to just mention that these programs are now available on our aggregator platform called eSkill India. And there are about 750 courses on that, which we've created, we've aggregated in partnership with completely pedigree names like Microsoft, SAS, and Salesforce and Sailor Academy. And this particular module is also accessible there. So, and 2/3 of these 750 courses are free. So it's a very, very rich resource that people are free to use. We have now 3 lakh enrollments on the platform. Just in the span of the last 6-7 months, it's grown very, very sharply. So there is now immense opportunity for people to upskill themselves if they are motivated to do so.
Sure. I think that is really helpful. The eSkill India platform is very, very important for the youth who's attending the conclave today must actually go and see the eSkill India platform. Also, before I go on to a question for Kalyan, and I think or maybe I'll go on to the question to Kalyan and come back to you, Vandana. Kalyan, just if you can, tell the audience what is Parfi's approach to skill development. How do they approach skill development very differently from everyone else in the sector? How is the approach so unique and different? And we saw a lot through the video. It'll be just good to hear from you what is Parfi's approach to skill development in general. And then the second, and maybe once you answer that, I have a second question for you, which I'll come to you. So over to you,
Kunaal. And of course, Vandana has been fascinating in her. There's so many, like in the COVID scenario, I think so many job skills still to chase. So it's a good news for lots of the people who are feeling a bit down or a bit future unemployed or whatever. So just to give a quick glance of what Pan-IIT Alumni Reach for India Foundations or Pan-IIT approach for skilling is, that we actually work on the same principles that have created the IIT institution where it is, right? So if you look at what has happened to IIT, they're publicly owned, right? And they're globally some of the best. And we call that as the IIT spirit. So the foundation's fundamental aim is to bring that IIT spirit into vocational education. And therefore, when you actually, for example, look at basic tenets which are there, good or bad, for the past many odd years that IITs have been around from 1950s, they've always had a short placement. So we first and foremost believe that every job is not complete till there is an on-the-job training aspect, and therefore a placement that goes with it, because that's a very important integral part of the entire. So skilling per se, like you mentioned also, without practical training is not adequate. So therefore, we believe that it's single product. It's not training and then placement. It's training along with placement. So that's number one. So it's an assured placement model. Second, we are very conscious that we want to target this for the SC, ST, Dalit, minorities, economically weaker section, folks in aspirational districts, really underprivileged youth. And of course, you can run it free or on a 100% subsidy model, but we've always believed that there should be copay. And therefore, they have a 100% skill loan facility that they at least pay as part subsidized fee, so that they feel a sense of ownership. They also co-contribute in real time in the cost recovery. And most important is there's a credit history that's created. And now with the fintech revolution just about to come in, the first loan is always the tricky loan. Nobody wants to give loan, especially to folks who are so-called credit unworthy. Right? I don't believe they're credit unworthy. I think it's just that we don't know about them. That's because we have devised systems that kind of exclude them. Therefore, we kind of say they are not included. That's a systemic issue, not the issue of the person involved. So if we can actually take care of that and create some credit history, even at a micro level, right? The loans in our case vary as small as 10,000 rupees and go up to 1,50,000 for a 2 to 3 month program, up to 2-year program. So obviously, depending on the program duration, etc., people actually have 100% assured skill loan financing facility. It's pretty much exactly again like IIT. I keep drawing the parallel because it's easy to relate. So if somebody got into IIT admission and don't have money to pay the fee, they instantaneously get a loan from, in fact, most banks are on the campus. And the reason why that happens is there's an inherent bankability in the course quality, in employability. So bankers understand that this is a very bankable proposition. So that's number two. And that also keeps us on our toes. We've existed through many schemes and we've honestly never partaken in any scheme. And the reason why we hang around is because the bankers keep us on our foot. They ensure placements happen. Even in COVID, we've actually collected repayments because we've understood that, some of these folks have to kind of earn their livelihood, etc. So that's what happens. And the third important facet is, of course, goes without saying, you should have best-in-class infrastructure. That's where we work with state governments. We really partner with them very intimately, in some sense like a joint venture of sorts. And they actually open their wallets, open their hearts. And we should recognize that governments today are very proactive. They are wanting to find mechanisms to deliver development very proactively. There is huge political will. So we are, for example, in Jharkhand in every district. And it's probably the state with highest number of aspirational districts. So in some sense, that's how we are actually taken a public institutional approach, just like IITs in every state of the country now. So we are very carefully building an institutional architecture. The point you said about Virohan, that we want to reimagine the vocational education system. It's in some sorts what we also kind of aspire for, learn from all folks like you and Vandana's wonderful work at NSDC. And we kind of build that, reimagine, bring, if I may use the word, IIT-ness to a vocational education system so that it is one of the best in the world. I mean, why should it not be? I don't see any other reason. We should actually aspire to be the best. And India is one of the youngest countries out there. And if we can have a world-class vocational education paradigm, right, then nothing in the world can stop us really. And honestly, I think Indians are liked all around the world. So in fact, even Prime Minister Modi also has been saying that we should be the human capital provider for the world. And that vision really is what we kind of work on.
Thank you, Kalyan. I think it was very, very helpful for the audience to know, the three facets that you highlighted that makes the PARFI model to skill development very, very unique and also assures a career progression in jobs. I think that probably is very helpful for the audience. But I would also, during your conversation, I noticed you touched upon COVID and you spoke about, how things are during COVID. I would like you to take this further and maybe, we've all read about the migrant population during COVID and how they've been affected, etc. So I would like you to share your thoughts about the migrant population and the opportunities for them and how maybe PARFI or the ecosystem can help them.
Absolutely. So great question, Kunal. As you know, actually, the famous saying is that the distance makes heart grow fonder, right? I mean, honestly, when we don't have enough people on the ground now, Indian industry is feeling the heat of the amount of work that migrant population in India really kind of services, right? If you look at all the bottom of pyramid trades, be it in construction sector, which is India's second largest employer, apparel, which is again one of the largest women manpower engaging employer, or logistics, right? I mean, all your the famous Bihari driver in Mumbai, right? It's fundamentally migratory driven, and that's a great thing. In a country like India, if the labor market is mature enough to figure out opportunities for everybody and take inclusive approach, right? That's a fantastic place to be in. And honestly, these are jobs. I know Haryana, for example, just kind of promulgated a 75% quota. But the fact is, these are jobs the locals don't want to do. That's the reason why somebody from outside the state is actually coming. So then the market is really working. Somebody does not want to do something, they're not wanting to, I mean, they need not do it. Somebody else is doing it. So it's wonderful. So actually, that's the system we had, and honestly, many of us were not recognizing, and we've seen these very distressing pictures of people walking back and how they've been treated. So Pan IT is really one of the largest migratory skilling system, and we train in people in UPs and the Bihars and the Jharkhand so that we streamline some of this, and their jobs are fairly national. So I think my point is, one, we need to start accepting migration in a much more non-stigmatic way, because we somehow tend to feel either a bit of, it's very natural. It's just a market with the way it is working. For instance, I myself, I'm from Andhra Pradesh, but I reside in Mumbai. So I'm a migrant. I think Mr. Modi is a migrant. A whole lot of people are not where they are, whatever they were born. So I think we need to be very careful. Very, very okay with it. First thing. The second thing is we need to therefore, be a little more, little more empathic when it comes to design of it, right? So, for example, in COVID, we've actually helped companies that wanted manpower badly, and because these were construction work, some of them honestly in strategic regions for the country, what's happening on the Jammu Kashmir side. They're actually important construction work, work that was getting stopped. So we actually facilitated some of those conversations, deployed people in Andaman, and I don't want to really get into the nitty-gritty, but point is that in these times we've actually enabled that with social distancing. They travel, we've got special permits, we've got them 100% tested before they even took on the journey. So honestly, I think there's so much amount of work that we can actually do with the entire migratory system. Instead of treating it as a problem, we probably need to look at it as a very good market-driven solution, but strengthen it definitely, and build some more systems that welcome them. Of course, accommodation, etc., is always an issue. So I think that's important. We need to learn that from the crisis. The second thing PanIT has been very actively doing is entire piece on testing. You can see the PanIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation in Jharkhand has set up in really tribal areas 1 lakh tests per month, kind of pool tests per month, kind of a training, very state-of-the-art RT-PCR facilities. So COVID is something where I think honestly it's a very important learning for all of us to reimagine some of these systemically. And that's where technology, that's where more equity-based, innovative paradigms, I think those have to be brought in. And we should also obviously strengthen the self-employment or the entrepreneurship piece way back in these states like Uttar Pradesh. AWOK is headquartered in UP, and honestly, there's so much work to be done there. I think the short point is that good or bad, the skilling and the livelihood sector has huge amount of work and therefore growth in a sad way, but it's nevertheless a lot of work that has to be done to undo the impact of the devastation that COVID has caused. So we might all have to do harder and smarter and better work going forward than what we've been doing. It's unfortunately, it's a situation that we've got, and we have to reverse the distress that has happened.
Thank you so much, Kalyan. I think what you shared with us about how you have helped the migrant population during COVID is certainly heartening. I think it's really great to see how you've connected them to certain construction projects or helped other companies who needed people during COVID, and how you've managed to, do that when the entire, economy and the country was under lockdown. I think it's great, to know this. It's very heartening to know this.
Just one more point, Kunal. Just one, sorry, I forgot to add. Actually, see, one of the things we have done, and this is useful for others, that's why I'm making a point, is the whole bio bubble concept on which IPL, for example, itself is predicated, is how you test 100% of the people, and if you have a residential facility, you prima facie seal it. Is how we are even now doing training in our nursing colleges, and that's a lot of healthcare workers. We have just done COVID lab technician training for a whole lot of public sector health workers. So I think we need to remember that we have to live with COVID. And I forgot to mention this, but that's important. We need to learn to deal with the new normal, and that's absolutely valuable. And we need to kind of keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Thank you for that, Kalyan. So Vandana, one more question for you. I think at least I can tell you, I think as Praveen had mentioned earlier, I went to Delhi University, I went to SRCC. I did not know about vocational training, or I can tell you I'm reasonably okay educated. I'll say, but I'll tell you, I did not even know that there was a concept called vocational training. Vocational training as a concept was not even known to me, right? And NSDC is doing such a wonderful role with vocational training. And now that we have a panel about youth empowerment, NSDC is very uniquely placed, very differently from the school education NCRT-based system, very differently placed from the UGC college education system. I would love for you to talk for about 2 to 3 minutes about how the NSDC system of education is uniquely different from a school or a college education, and how can it really empower youth. Of course, NSDC works through training partners, as you mentioned, but how can it empower youth to take what is the advantage for the youth to take these programs, and how can it empower them to be successful in what they want to do? Also, while you're going to talk about this, I would also while we use the word vocational training, I mean, if I was to just move away and use another word for it, it's essentially professional training. Right, but it's essentially training to become a professional, training to do a job in the market. Right, you have so many job roles like this. A chef is a profession. A chartered accountant is a profession. But unfortunately, other roles of vocational training are not so well known. People don't even know the concept of vocational training. So maybe if you can elaborate that a little, that'll be very helpful for the audience, because I can say from my personal example, I did not know about vocational training till I got into it.
Well, I mean, you're not alone, and I think in our country there's been an overwhelming dominance of formal education, and the only pathway after school was either you go to college or you just drop out, and it was a very unfortunate paradigm. But I think over the last 4-5 years, there's been a very, very significant shift, and I would say even in the formal education, in school education as well as college education, till 2015 or so, people, if you talked to them about vocational education, maybe their eyes would glaze over. But today, when you talk of them, actually there is a huge interest, and they are reaching out to NSDC on how they can embed more of vocational content into their courses and programs, because they realize that a vanilla degree program is no longer really good. And frankly, we know that from the employment data that the highest rate of unemployment is actually in the graduates. So there is clearly a big misalignment that is there in the pure educational track, other than those who might really be pursuing very much higher kind of qualifications. So vocational education, I think, is that, I would call it really the plus, because it actually is in many ways giving confidence to a person about himself, and at the same time also making them more employable and opening up a whole lot of livelihood opportunities for them. And it's basically something that we need to definitely push out a lot more information on, based on some studies done by Dell Foundation and many of our own analyses. We know that the choices kids make about what course to pursue are based on very scanty information. 88% plus is based on just friends or relatives, what they say, kar lo, ye kar lo, that kind of a decision is taken. It's not informed. So we actually are currently in the midst of discussing how we can take this whole information that is sitting in our ecosystem out and push it into platforms or intermediaries who are engaging with students when they are making those choices. So it could be counseling platforms like iDream Career or other platforms. We are talking about these occupational maps that we have, which our sector skill councils have created on how career progression happens. We now have salary information. That information we will be pushing out more systematically. And in terms of what students can do, I think the possibilities today are way more than probably what you might have had, and definitely much more than what we had. The earlier choices were very linear. You kind of went from class 12 into another program. Today, you can do parallel, processes where you could be pursuing a college degree and at the same time doing a course. And you could be doing a course and then getting back into a formal kind of program later. And right now, it's still a bit rough on the edges in terms of that pathway to come back into formal, but I just want to make that point very clearly that at the highest levels, there's a lot of discussion on the credit framework so that that mobility between vocational and formal education becomes more seamless. But the point is still, even if you're pursuing a college degree, you can take courses. And as per our impact analyses, even the government programs, which are completely free and are relatively at the lower end in terms of the course levels, we have found that the certificate, the person who has achieved certification has a 1.8 times higher likelihood of being in a job than one who is not certified. And the wage that the person who has a certification and versus another person who does not have a certification but with a job is 15% higher, the wage premium. And we also have, if you forget about the short-term skilling content that's gone in, but even the recognition of prior learning, which is basically certifying an existing skilled person, even there, the impact of just that certification is about 19% higher wage premium is what our analysis shows. And the person, most importantly, feels significantly empowered. 75 to 79% is the range of people saying they felt more confident, they felt that their prospects were better, they felt more assured of being able to negotiate for a job just by virtue of having a certificate. And it may seem very small to a lot of us, but for people who have never had that opportunity to demonstrate that they did have a professional proficiency, it's a very powerful intervention. And what Kalyan does in the Heartland, I think, is remarkable in the way they have transformed the lives of people coming from extremely backward areas. And you see that they're able to say, I'm willing to go abroad. From a person who's never been outside their village to be able to have the confidence to say, I can go abroad and land on my feet there. That is what vocational training does. I don't think that can come with a college degree. And when you talk to the youth, just using their hands, applying their knowledge, doing something which is closer to a job gives immense confidence. And one more thing which has been discussed earlier is, I think,
Vandana, I just wanted to hold your thought for 1 minute because you mentioned a few very powerful things. And, I want to talk from our experiences of running a skilling institute. So we run an institute in vocational training for healthcare workers. So there are 3 kinds of healthcare workers. Doctors typically form 10 to 15% of the healthcare infrastructure. Nurses that typically form between 20 to 25% of the healthcare infrastructure. And 60 to 70% of the healthcare infrastructure are known as health techs. They're known as operation theater technicians, X-ray technicians, OT technicians, right? I would actually wanted to highlight to you that about over 40% of our enrollments are people who finish college and are not able to get jobs, and then realize that they need to enroll into a professional program, which is an NSDC approved professional program to get jobs. And I think you really highlighted it so powerfully and beautifully that the program that we do today are actually enable them to get jobs rather than an overall diploma or a degree, which is just a generic model. If I talk about over 40% of our students finishing college come to us to do these programs.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Kunaal. I'm not at all surprised, because that's what even our data says. There's a large number of people who are with those degrees and still are coming into programs. Yours is a relatively premium program. I'm talking about even in the government free programs. We have a large number of people in our candidate profiles who are with those degrees. So clearly there is a value which the vocational program brings, which is not currently available in our vanilla degree programs. And the beauty is that today they do not have to be mutually exclusive. So somebody can even do these alongside. And the online offerings can also give that flexibility.
Absolutely.
So Kunal, the way we explain it is a pizza approach, right? The education is the pizza base. The toppings are all occasional. So you can't have pizza just as the base, right? Eventually, you need to get the toppings.
I see Mr. Venkateshwarlu has joined us. I think he may be here for a very limited period of time. So, I quickly want to go to him before I come back to each of you, Kalyan and Vandana. Praveen, I would like for you to introduce Mr. Venkateshwarlu, and then, maybe
So,
ask his few
as
questions.
I shared, Shri L. Venkateshwarlu, who's a 1991 batch IS officer, is a BTech from NIT Warangal and Masters from IIT Delhi. He has a wealth of experience in administration, working in different capacities. So what he has been, in the current role, he is the Director General for Deen Dayal Upadhyay State Institute of Rural Development, and also he heads the UP Academy of Administration Management. So he is actually involved in shaping the young minds and guiding the new administrators. So his role is very, very critical. I'm sure he can throw a lot of light on how today's youth can actually, contribute to the nation building. So I would hand it over to you, Kunaal, to take it forward and ask the question.
Thank you for that, Praveen. Welcome to the panel, Mr. Venkateshwarlu. I have only one very important question for you. I think you will be the best to answer that for our audience. I would love to know from you, because, you come from the administrative services, you work with the country very closely. If you can tell us, how can the youth contribute towards building our nation, and what kind of jobs can they expect to do when they are looking at contributing towards building the nation? What are the kind of job opportunities that they may have at their hand?
So, Sabhi, I apologize to all the other friends and colleagues. I could not join because urgently I had to attend the program. तो साथियों, मैं चूंकि गवर्नमेंट सर्विस में काम करता हूं, मैं सोच भी रहा हूं कि in the inaugural session also they have presented a lot of data, the existing unemployment levels, and also the skill gaps available in various sectors, whether it's agriculture, industry, MSME sector and all. So even now the tremendous the information is available regarding the job requirements also, skill requirements also, and available skill sets during the corona times. So these all information has been collected. It has been posted onto various platforms so that the job providers and job seekers can come together. In the rural areas, because I work mostly because I'm the in charge of State Institute of Rural Development, so I look after the rural areas. I got a lot of exposure to it. तो हमारे यूथ क्या कर सकते हैं यदि हम लोग उसको विचार करें? Agriculture sector में, let us see whether it is a fruits, vegetables and all. Now you can have a premium sector, which organic products or good quality fruits or good quality vegetables. There are a lot of people who could pay for it when they are sure that these fruits or vegetables are organic and they are of good quality, especially if they are grown on the help of the biofertilizers, whether it's a cow dung or the cow-based things. Now in the rural sector, the government is putting a lot of emphasis on the human employment. Now we have got 4 lakh and they have got a lot of handicraft products are being created, being manufactured or created by these women groups. We can analyze the market conditions. What are the handicraft products which are in demand? What are the products that are being created प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय दी हमारे वुमेन सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स, उनको मार्केट रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से थोड़ा बहुत पैकेजिंग में थोड़ा बहुत उसमें इंप्रूवमेंट लाके उसकी वैल्यू इज कॉल्ड वैल्यू एडिशन में it can be made more attractive, and yes, you can create market for these women producers, self-help groups की, क्योंकि government is also giving a lot of emphasis. So यदि some youth who is interested in the marketing aspect, so he can definitely explore into those areas depending upon the availability of the market data. दूसरी, यदि यूथ को और क्या कर सकते हैं, मान लें कि सामाजिक सेक्टर है, सोशल सर्विस यदि करना चाहते हैं, तो वेदर इट इज ए एनवायरमेंटल एस्पेक्ट हो, वेरियस कैलामिटीज को एड्रेस करने के लिए जो बात है, और जो वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट, एनवायरमेंट, इस तरह की बहुत सारे सोशल इश्यूज है, उस पर काम करने के लिए यू कैन yes become a social activist, and you can seek here the financial cooperation also from the corporate social responsibility. There are maybe many donors and charitable organizations who would help you in carrying out some relevant activities which require some kind of a catalyzing, some kind of a you need to create some kind of atmosphere. सोसाइटी में वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात हो, सपोज बेटी पढ़ाओ बेटी बचाओ की जो बात हो रही है, या पीस एंड हार्मोनी इन द सोसाइटी, वेदर इट इज उसमें कास्ट हेट्रेड, कम्युनल हेट्रेड, वेरियस थिंग्स है व्हिच आर वेरी डिस्टर्बिंग, उसको टू क्रिएट पीस एंड हार्मोनी यू कैन run an organization, voluntary organization type of thing, some kind of social activism that is a great contribution to the society. So the education sector also, education sector, if you see the government schools, there the condition is definitely not good. There are a lot of data available. The student who is studying 5th class in an elementary school is standard maybe class 2 or class 3 type and all. How can we improve the elementary education? What kind of support do we require? Many times the parents themselves, they don't send the children to the school, or they don't monitor to ensure that the child goes to the school every day. So there are various issues. Somebody can do the campaign for that, but presently he is already unemployed. How can you do it? Because then he has to seek some kind of financial contribution from voluntary, from the charitable organizations, or some corporate social responsibility type of thing. The other, like in similarly, in the political field, I can also say that in the political field, we are already analyzing. There is 33% reservation. It is also concerned with the women empowerment also. There is a 33% reservation for the women members in various panchayats. There is a Gram Pradhan, Village Pradhan, Kshetra Panchayat Sadasya and all. If you go there, many times somebody is working on behalf of her. भले ही उसको महिला को खड़ा कर दिया गया किसी घर से, और उनको काम नहीं करने दिया जाता, उनको पति या उनके ससुर कोई काम करता है. That is not really on a real empowerment. Suppose मान ले 33% है, but on the record, 40% are women representatives, but in the field we see only 5 to 10% are not even 10%. My guess is maybe 5% of the people may be working on their own independently, but the remaining people, महिला प्रतिनिधि केवल नाम के वास्ते कोई और उसके लिए काम कर रहा है. But that is not the spirit of the Constitution. The 73rd, 74th Amendment, they categorically earmarked 33% seats for the women members. तो उनको स्वयं काम करने वाली, समझने वाली महिलाएं खड़े होना चाहिए, जीतना चाहिए. We need to create that kind of climate. We need to, when we want to bring a transformation in the society, उसको भी campaign करना पड़ेगा. Suppose next, I am seeing in the near future, say by in April or so, the elections will take place. Next 6 months, in the next panchayat election, because panchayat representatives play a very huge role in the rural transformation, in bringing about a lot of changes. So this could be to some extent applicable for even the reservations also. backward reservations or the SC reservations also, the people who really belong to that category and really want to work on their own may not stand and get elected, but some big man in the village may just keep a protest. एक अपना नीचले अपने खेत में काम करने वाले हो, घर में काम करने वालों को खड़ा करके उसको जिता दे, और वो वास्तव में वो काम नहीं करेगा, प्रॉक्सी में काम दूसरा करता है, ऐसा भी है। तो कितना परसेंटेज है, कितना अलग बात है, बट लेकिन रियल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन के लिए, एम्पावरमेंट के लिए जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस है और रिजर्वेशन की जो व्यवस्था है, उसको लागू करने के लिए some person who is very serious about it has to work on it. तो ग्राम स्वराज जो महात्मा गांधी जी ने जो बात कही है, तो somebody has to take up this issue. महात्मा गांधी जी ने कहा भी था, दो तरह का इश्यू है कि after independence politics will happen as usual, politics for power, and there is also politics for people, politics for the societal transformation with the democratic thought and democratic ideas. Though the democracy has formally come, but the society ये बहुत दिनों से उस तरह की shackles में है, real वो सोसाइटी उस तरह की ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन के लिए it is not prepared to that level. It requires tremendous work in the field to change the attitude of the people to accept the democratic spirit. उसके लिए जो politics for power and politics for people, real transformation के लिए democratic ethos, जो न्याय, समानता और बंधुत्व, जो basic fundamental values है the constitution में, उसको लागू करने के लिए भी somebody has to work for it. महात्मा गांधी जी ने कहा कि it is more important, लेकिन in course of time somehow वो that has gone to the background. लेकिन असली बात यदि कोई यूथ यदि सामाजिक रूप से ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन करना चाहते हैं, तो इस एंगल पे भी कार्य करने की जरूरत है। पॉलिटिकल फील्ड है, सोशल फील्ड है, और इकोनॉमिक फील्ड में यू कैन बी ए प्रोड्यूसर और यू कैन बी ए जॉब सीकर, और सपोज आपकी मार्केट पोटेंशियल में जो वुमन प्रोडक्ट्स वगैरह बना रहे हैं, उसको कुछ लिटिल चेंजेस करके, कुछ क्वालिटी एडिशन करके यू कैन क्रिएट मार्केट। तो आपको देखना पड़ेगा कि आपका किसमें जील है, एंथुसियाज्म है। मैं यूथ से इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि भाई यूथ के पास जो एनर्जी है, ये स्वयं अपनी एनर्जी को फॉर्मली इनफॉर्मली कहीं न कहीं भी एंगेज करना चाहिए। I believe very strongly in the God. If anybody is trying to work for the benefit of the society, there is some invisible force in the nature that will definitely pull him up and place him in an appropriate position. तो ये हमेशा पॉजिटिव दृष्टि बनाए रखें, जो अपनी के सामने की जो परिस्थिति है उसमें कैसे किसी न किसी के माध्यम से आपको जिस सेक्टर में, जिस एक्टिविटी में रुचि है, एग्रीकल्चर है, राइट एक्टिविटीज है, सोशल सेक्टर है, जिसमें है, और लोगों को जोड़ें और एग्जामिन करें। बहुत लर्निंग मटेरियल है, बहुत सारे लोग गाइडेंस देने के लिए, मेंटर बनने के लिए तैयार है, तमाम इंडस्ट्रियल एसोसिएशंस है, और हमारे उद्योग विभाग में हर एक जिले में तो हमारे पास डिप्यूटी कमिश्नर है इंडस्ट्री सेक्टर, देयर इज उसमें फैसिलिटेशन सेंटर्स बने हुए हैं टू एस्टैब्लिश द स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज और माइक्रो एंटरप्राइजेस। तो उस तरह का वेर एवर यू आर इंटरेस्टेड, और उद्योग बंधु भी है स्टेट लेवल पे, ऑनलाइन आपको असिस्टेंस अवेलेबल है। तो इसमें कहीं न कहीं पे, और इंडस्ट्री एसोसिएशन वाला भी जो मॉर्निंग में इनॉग्रल सेशन में बोल रहे थे, वो भी आप मदद करने के लिए तैयार है। तो somebody has to explore in whichever area he is interested in. He has to search for it, work for it. Initial stage में आपको थोड़ा बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रगल करना पड़ेगा, but लेकिन I believe very strongly in the individual force. If you are very positive, you are trying to work for the benefit of the society, definitely you will be taken care. That's all.
Thank you so much. I think you highlighted a lot of sectors in which the youth can work and how they can benefit. It's very good to know they can help with the economy, they can help with the political sector, they can help with the social sector. There is so much choice, and the kind of change that they can make is also very meaningful. So thank you for that. I think it should certainly inspire people in our audience to, take up some sort of employment or apply. And it's very also interesting to know, as you mentioned, there's so much reservation for women, and not many women are not necessarily taking it properly, or even if they're there, they're in the background. They're only less than 5% who are actually doing it. So I think it's very important for our society to know that women should also come in front, should take these opportunities and not just be in the background, because that is the only way a society can transform. So thank you so much for sharing that, the words of wisdom. I think it'll be hugely helpful with someone with your background, to be sharing that with all the audience. I think we have a very few minutes left. So I would like, people to take some questions. I see 2 questions have come. I think Vandana has left the panel, but maybe someone can answer this question. What has NSDC been doing in rural areas, and what is your organization in villages, and what is your impact in terms of results? So um, I can let Mr. Venkateshwarlu answer maybe some of it, because I know the DDU GKY scheme has been doing a lot of these projects in rural areas and the kind of impact. So maybe if Mr. Venkateshwarlu, you can just quickly tell the kind of government schemes and the kind of impact that they have created for the youth. What are these schemes and what are the kind of impact?
Yeah, the National Skill Development Mission, what is it doing? Or even there is a state level also, no skill development mission is there. So you can definitely go to their website. They must have trained lot of people in various sectors. To the best of my knowledge, they have collected the youth who are interested in to build that skill gap. What are the various trades? Whether it is building or the repairing, the electrician, plumber. There are various sectors, various trades are opened. They were all trained in ITIs and also polytechnics, and they are uploaded in their website. One can go and see the large number of youth have been trained in various sectors, and there are a lot of voluntary agencies who are employed in skilling them, and it is also their responsibility to search for their employment also. They have conducted a lot of employment fair, job fairs, and where the small industries, micro enterprise and all, they also participated. Maybe sometimes, maybe online or offline, maybe virtual mode also. Some as per the requirement, when those both job providers and speakers have the job seekers and providers, the skill required and the skill available, when they are being brought to a same platform, they must have been, a lot of people have been selected. I think that data is also must be available in their website. If somebody is interested, he can go and
I think that's helpful. I think if our audience can go, as you correctly said, look at these various agencies, the sectoral councils, or look at the agencies, like HSRLM, BSRLM, livelihood missions. They do a lot of these programs, and the results will actually be available for each of us to see what these missions have been able to achieve and the kind of work that they're doing. So I hope that answers the question for one of the audience. The second question that I see is, how do you identify or select a trainee? Now, I think I will ask Kalyan, maybe because you run an organization, Kalyan, at Parfi. How do you identify, Kalyan, and select people who come and apply to Parfi to do a program? And I'll be happy to share what we do at Virohan after you, but I think that's the last question. And so we would like to wrap up after that so that the conclave doesn't get delayed.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. So in our case, we don't select the employee. I mean, the trainee self-selects because we have a loan model. So whoever is willing to take a loan and is willing to take the liability that comes with it, even if they can't afford it today, but if they're open to taking the liability of tomorrow and I want to invest, and not get a freebie, and are willing to kind of self-select like that, we welcome them based on, of course, each course has its own entry criteria based on employment requirements, but otherwise it's really we prefer the poor people, SC, ST and all of these, and barring that there is no other cap. It's self-selection of employees.
Right. I think that is very, very interesting, Kalyan. I love the fact that you said that they actually get to choose you rather than you selecting. That's very, very powerful. I think the youth who's listening to this on the panel should be very happy to know that you have a choice. You can go to these organizations and choose what you really want to do. I think Mr. Venkateshwarlu also highlighted something very powerful. He said, you can go choose between the political sector, the social sector, or the business sector. You have a choice. So I think how do most people also, I would say how we select someone is that, obviously the youth decides to first come to us if they want to do a program in healthcare vocational training. And then we have some sort of an assessment, which is not really a technical assessment because we're anyways going to train the youth on technical knowledge, but it is more an aptitude and an attitude assessment. Basically, is the child serious about what they want to do? Do they really want to do this? Is this their area of interest? Or have they just heard it from a friend of theirs and come to do a program? Because for us, it's very, very important that the child makes the decision out of their own wish. They know that this is the right program. So we actually do counseling in the beginning just to map the attitude and the aptitude of the child to make sure that the decision that they're taking, obviously a documented process, but something that they do so that they know and they're happy with the kind of program that they will be doing. I see a question from Ankit. Do we have time, Praveen, or I think enough time over? Praveen, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think we can take this last question and
then we can wrap up. Okay. So, Kalyan, I think we have a question for you. Will IIT online data science degree be a game changer for the learners?
That's a good start, I think, from IITs. But honestly, I want to just, eventually the game is in really acquiring the competence. So in some sense, there's a famous quote. It is not how many courses you have gone through, how much of the course has gone through you that really matters. So keep that in mind. It is that actually it's a platform, it's a course, but eventually, how do you kind of perform after absorbing it in the industry that will determine its success? Not per se the availability of the course. That's a good start, but that's necessary, but not a sufficient condition. So keep that in mind. I also just want to thank our team again for giving us an opportunity. It's wonderful listening to L. Venkateshwarlu sir. He's also an IIT, and it's phenomenal the work he's doing in UP. So really inspiring. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the esteemed panel. I think thank you so much for taking time, talking to the youth who's on the conclave today. This has been hugely helpful. If we have 2 minutes, Praveen, I would just like to show the youth a video of how and what things can be done in vocational training. And, this is a Virohan video, but I think it's not only unique to Virohan, anyone else can sort of also, do we have time or should we?
we have time.
Okay, so I
would just, also put a panel poll question also. There was one poll question which came from somebody. So I'm just launching this panel which says that do students get guided by parents about their career choices? So if some of them can answer this, because this was something which was very interesting insight. So I'm just launching this polling here, and if people can respond by the time, you can just click on your screen whether you say yes or no. Because that's very interesting. I think 100% say yes. So that's it. I think we have scoring. So still, that is something interesting inside which we still find. So anyway, so over to you, Kunaal. You can show the video and then we can wrap it up. Thank you.
We'll wrap it up after that. Okay. So just quickly, I'm just going to show a video. This is not the video. Sorry. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
तेरे अंदर तेरी मंजिल, तेरे अंदर तेरे रास्ते, तेरी किस्मत तेरे हाथों, चुन ले अपना सफर सफर। तेरा हुनर हुनर, तेरी कदर कदर, 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 तेरा हुनर हुनर, तेरी कदर कदर। रात की मेहनत रंग लाएगी, अब सुबह पे हक जता ले। अंधेरों से बढ़कर होती है उजाले की उमर उमर। तेरा हुनर हुनर, तेरी कदर कदर, तेरा हुनर हुनर, तेरी कदर कदर। अपने हाथों की गर्मी से सूरज सुनहरा रोशन कर ले। जिधर मौके चल के खुद आएंगे जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर 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 रात की मेहनत रंग लाएगी अब सुबह पे हक जता ले अंधेरों से बढ़कर होती है उजाले की उमर उमर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर अपने हाथों की गर्मी से सूरज सुनहरा रोशन कर ले मौके चल के खुद आएंगे जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर मौके चल के खुद आएंगे जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर 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 तेरा हुनर
है वो जो राहत वाला डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट चौधरी वाला
रंग लाएगी सुबह पे हक जता ले अंधेरों से बढ़कर होती है उजाले की उमर उमर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर तेरा हुनर हुनर तेरी कदर कदर अपने हाथों की गर्मी से सूरज सुनहरा रोशन कर ले मौके चल के खुद आएंगे जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर मौके चल के खुद आएंगे जाएगा तू जिधर जिधर
So I hope that video was helpful. I see the panel has changed already. So let me just say bye to everyone and thank you so much for participating. Thank you, Kalyan. Thank you, Vandana. And thank you, Mr. Venkateshwarlu. It was hugely helpful. I hope the audience had a good time. And over to you, Praveen. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Kunaal, for holding it such an interesting session. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye.